Chair of DEA at the moment. Before we begin, I would like to give acknowledgement to country. I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people, the traditional owners of the land on which we are gathered, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I must begin by congratulating Kate Lardner and her committee for assembling such an impressive array of speakers and such an interesting, informative and hopefully challenging program. The majority of you who are here are still medical students and are on the brink of wonderful careers in the very fine profession of medicine. You have every right to expect the intellectual and emotional and technical challenges of being a doctor and to experience the deep satisfaction of service to others and the many rewards which that will bring you. You have every right, as I did 45 years ago, to look forward to a future of great hope and scientific advances and personal happiness. All generations have their own challenges, but yours is now facing an environmental future which is unique in the recorded history of human endeavour, a future which is essentially being held hostage by narrow vested interests in many cases, and ignorance and shunning of scientific evidence, and deliberate misinformation at times which prevail over the wider public interest. There are, of course, many manifestations attributable to climate change, and we are now beginning to bear them heavily in Australia, our precious but increasingly sunburnt country, with proven 0.9 degrees centigrade rise since 1910 on land and in the oceans, and most of that, of course, happening in the last 50, 60 years, and with every indication that that will get worse before it gets better. We are now experiencing heat waves of increasing intensity and frequency and deadly bushfires, droughts in some regions and lethal floods in others, well documented falling rainfall levels in the southwest of my state of Western Australia, with endangered species being pushed to the brink, and indeed this valuable biodiversity hotspot at risk, and the same can be said of much of southern Australia. Water supplies for almost all of the capital cities have now become increasingly dependent upon desalination plants. The Great Barrier Reef is under increasing stress, and emblematic species such as the leadbeater's possum is moving into the critically endangered area, with rampant logging in many regions now being mooted to become once again. On the global scale, Typhoon Haiyan, which swept the Philippines with a ferocity never experienced before in that region, vicious blizzards in the northern hemisphere with strong wave surges along the British coast and flooding in that country, melting Arctic ice and shrinking glaciers in many countries. As rising sea levels threaten the Pacific Islands, and the water table of Bangladesh and elsewhere is now rising and affecting their water supply, and with the very real possibilities in the decades ahead of millions of environmental refugees in the future, with no United Nations convention to actually define what their rights may be. Famines in Africa and diminishing arable lands across the globe, and so the story goes on. And yet we are told repeatedly that we must passively accept these changes because neither this country nor the world has sufficient political backbone or sufficient political skill to make the many measures which are necessary to control this runaway train. But amidst this gloom, there are increasing numbers of important and hopeful signs. You are one of them. Almost 400 people registered for this conference, 3 times what it was in Melbourne just 2 years ago. The wider youth of this country and across the globe, through multiple agencies, are beginning to make their voice heard through social media and so on, and eventually they will drown out the climate sceptics. They'll brush them aside. The increasing sophistication of the science and the weight of evidence, the voices of increasing numbers of concerned farmers and firemen and economists and insurers and dwellers in bushfire-prone areas and along vulnerable coastlines, and the doctors who treat the burns and those affected by heat exhaustion and heat stroke and from severe carbon pollution adjacent to coal mines and coal-burning power plants, and those who become suicidal as drought follows drought and hope withers with the grass. And these doctors are also becoming more vocal as a consequence. Renewable energy technologies are continuing to advance, and if the externalities of coal are included, they are certainly, even now, competitive with coal and other fuels, fossil fuels. And if given political support, could well overtake fossil fuels, must overtake fossil fuels if the planet is to have a chance. And if those renewable technologies start to employ people, of course, they may be able to take, say, some of the manufacturing people that are being displaced by the collapse of the car industry and so on. The renewable energy technology sector is also becoming increasingly willing and able to use financial and political clout to challenge the fossil fuel industries and their political backers. China is now making huge efforts in this field, leading the world in many aspects of renewable energy technology and realising the urgent need to drive down their particulate matter and pollution and drive down their carbon emissions. Europe is well ahead of Australia in at least setting ambitious targets and working towards them, and the same can be said about the United States under Obama. Well, I've spent my life as a surgeon. I've also spent the last 30 plus years through the Australian Council on Smoking and Health, being involved in tobacco control and lobbying for legislation in this country. Australia leads the world in this field, and thousands of lives have been saved and many more will be saved as a consequence. This certainly makes that effort worthwhile. But every measure to drive down tobacco consumption has been viciously opposed by the tobacco and advertising industries and by some politicians in the past. Our environmental challenges, especially those associated with carbon emissions and climate change, are much larger. And activism in this area will certainly be opposed by those who believe they will lose out financially because of it. But the health consequences in Australia and globally are much greater if we fail, much greater than even tobacco has caused. You have the youth, the intellect, the energy, and hopefully the passion on your side, and together you can help guide this country and this planet into a much better future than our present trajectory will condemn us to. A couple of days ago, the Leader of the Opposition, Bill Shorten, said that it is an error to necessarily attribute a single extreme climatic event to climate change. In medicine and in science, of course, we're also wary about anecdotal evidence, a single case, to make a point. Aristotle said something similar 2,500 years ago when he said, "One swallow does not make a summer." But these extreme weather events are becoming more frequent and more intense and more explainable, and it is not just a single swallow we are speaking about, but a flight of the condors, filling the skies, blackening our skies. And excuses for inadequate action will ring increasingly hollow across this country and across this globe. As it did with tobacco control, Australia can again lead the world in this area. It is falling behind at the moment, falling behind drastically. I welcome you to this conference. I wish you well. I wish the conference well, and I certainly hope that you will become activists in this area. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Kingsley, for a very informative talk. Mine's not going to be quite so informative, just a few reflections. So it's going to be a bit of a reality check and then some housekeeping. So my views are all in the delegate handbook, which I'm sure you've all read. Yep. So for those of you who know me, I rant and rave about public speaking and how much I hate it, and then I get up here and there's no stopping me. So I'm just going to make one point and then some housekeeping. So when you take on something like organising this, you learn a lot about yourself. And under certain pressurised conditions, parts of your personality come out that you may not know that you had. So there were a few things that surprised me about myself. One of them was being quite ruthless, which some of you in this room will have been privy to, and some of you in this room might be speaking today because of that. But the thing that surprised me the most was that I had limits. So So I've always felt that I can do anything I want, that I can achieve anything, and I don't accept no, and I don't accept that I can't do something or I can't have something. So during this process, I realised that I was human and not superhuman. And I realised that there were some things that I just can't achieve, and this was quite a sting to me. So what I already did know about myself was that I like to do everything myself, and I hate handing things over, and I hate delegating. So that's the control freak in me. And yeah, I guess I realised that I couldn't kind of do this. This was something I couldn't do on my own. So once I embraced teamwork, I saw this conference grow before my very eyes. So the things that teamwork helped with was giving you that boost of inspiration when you needed it, having people to fall back on when you needed to take a few steps back, becoming empowered, meeting great people, having a good time, learning different ideas, and having your own views tested and challenged. And you kind of avoid that sense of being hugely overwhelmed that you get when you try and look at a huge issue like climate change by yourself. So for those of you who know Bill McKibben, he hit the nail on the head when he said, we're going to fight this by working together. So we can fight it by working from the bottom up, like something like 350.org, with the global climate movement, or we can fight it from the top down, such as becoming politicians like Bob Brown or Richard Di Natale, or we can be somewhere in the middle, such as joining iDEA, who do a bit of this and a bit of that at both ends of the spectrum. So the main thing is that we should be working with others on this. It's too hard to take on by ourselves. And it's important to recognise that there's different platforms from which you can do this. So you can become a student rep and get involved face-to-face. You can join something that's computer-based, like GetUp. So you can be on the tram on your iPhone, signing petitions. You can be involved in direct action, so using your creds to sit in front of bulldozers as a doctor or medical student has a big effect. You can go into politics, you can write to your local politicians or your local papers. So if there's one thing that you walk away with from this conference, it's that you join a group and that you find that niche, you find your niche in that group that suits your time constraints and compatibility. And that you never feel like you're not doing enough, because every bit counts and guilt does not equal longevity. So I want to thank everyone in the committee, because it's because of this team that you guys are all here today. I was just the lucky one that got chosen to say a few words and show my face, my favourite thing. So thank you, your work has paid off today. So on to the nitty-gritty. The social event is on tonight, and I would love everyone here to come along. It's included in your ticket, and it would be a great way to just have a chat and network, socialise a bit. The other thing is student elections are on tomorrow, so that's a great avenue for students to get involved. It's a lot of fun, so if you want to go to the DEA stall and sign up for that, I highly recommend it. Even if you've had no prior experience, you'll probably be really surprised at what you get out of it. So time management, this is the bane of my life, and because I'm genetically flawed to never being on time, I'm putting the onus onto the audience to make sure that you look at what time you need to be back in here and minus 5 minutes from that. So you're back 5 minutes in you're back in your seat 5 minutes early. So we've got a very tight schedule today. The final thing to mention is that we have this number here. So the speakers are going to talk and then they have Q&A for 5 minutes. So if you want to text a question, this is the number. It's going to kind of be flashing up every now and again. Okay, so that's all, folks. And thanks for coming along. And let's enjoy the show.